Hello guys and welcome to another Couchisode. Today we're gonna speed all the way to the Wild West.
And we're going to show that sometimes being evil is good. Or not. Just stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Welcome back guys to another Couchisode. We hope that you had a great week. And here we are again for that usual weekly dose of old and moldy. And we're going to go through the fast part, speeding all the way to the Wild West. That's what I said. But now we're just going to go to the speeding part and what we're going to be talking about today. So one of the classics, an absolute must that everybody should have played, but if they didn't, well, it goes for those that never seen what this game was back in the mid-90s. So we're going to be talking about the Need for Speed from 1995 for MS-DOS, and this was developed and published by Electronic Arts.
Great game back then.
It was indeed. Initially developed for the 3DO in 1994, the Need for Speed is introduced to MS-DOS and the PC in 1995, as I just mentioned, and later in 1996 to the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn. With 3D polygonal graphics, full motion video clips of the hottest sports cars available at that time, and an amazing soundtrack, the Need for Speed came to introduce a well-needed dose of badass in the racing games genre. Let's remind ourselves that back then, I mean, we had a lot of racing games, obviously, that came out, mostly or prominent on the consoles, probably. We had for example, the Mario Kart for the N64. We also had Screamer for the PC. All of them really good racing games.
They were good, but you couldn't drive a Lamborghini.
Well, you actually, I mean, even if you could, the question is the realism and the simulation, and that's what this game brought as new. So remember that, you know, this was back when the CD-ROM was starting to settle as a new form of media to be used for gaming. So not only on the PCs, but also on the console market, as we just said. And thus, EA made sure that it was properly showed off the fact that we were having a new support, a new media, such as the CD-ROM, which held a lot more data than just floppy drives, by including right off the bat an astonishing intro with all the 8 cars available to choose, while rocking your socks off with a kind of a rock metal tune that came up. And the soundtrack of this game was just amazing. Each one of the exquisite 8 cars available that grow from US muscle cars to Japanese drifting monsters are accompanied by detailed specs, history, audio commentary, and real-life videos of the same cars. This was actually a feature that was maintained throughout the future Need for Speed games, such as Need for Speed 2 and Porsche Challenges, where we could see also details about the cars on these games, but many others also included this. There are a total of 7 tracks, each one with different configurations and environments, where one of those is actually unlocked by winning races at all tracks on the tournament mode, and this was a track called Las Vegas. Talking about the game modes, besides tournament that we already discussed, we had a head-to-head mode, which was a multiplayer mode that relied on a connection via modem. We had single race and time trial, which were the usual racing game modes that we would see in games like this. For those that remember the original cover of the game name was actually Road and Track presents the Need for Speed. Now, who's Road and Track, or what is Road and Track, you might ask? Well, for us that we were in Portugal, I mean, didn't really mean anything, but this was a very famous American magazine for car enthusiasts that EA brought in as experts to accurately recreate all the cars available, as well as engine sounds and specifications. And so we also see inside the game that every time we look for the specs of a car, we see that it's kind of like a magazine, and that's exactly the purpose and the intention, which again also followed the same basic throughout some of the Need for Speed games that came later on. Now, even if we forget the tremendous success that Need for Speed series still is today and look at this game only, not only it was groundbreaking with the graphics and clever usage of full motion video, and this is something that we know that back then in the mid-90s, the usage of full motion video wasn't really that great in many instances, but it's the realism and gameplay, which is something that hardcore fans of the series still to this day say that there is nothing quite like it. I was having a discussion about this on Facebook on the retro gaming community the other day, and someone was telling me that this is a game that actually deserves a remake, and with the same mechanics that it had, because the simulation on this game was really, really, really amazing, and I think that it's really,
It was really cool
worthwhile.
back then.
For me personally, back then it was just astonishing. There wasn't many game modes, and the selection of cars might have sounded limited, but the whole experience was to enjoy both its graphics and different tracks, as well as the music and the precise and accurate supercar renditions on this video game of those, big cars like the Acura NSX, like the Dodge Viper RT10. I mean, all of these cars were just amazing, and they were really, really fun to drive in this classic from the Electronic Arts. Unfortunately, Electronic Arts also does not make it available on any digital platform, so you know what you have to do if you want to find and play this game. I would really advise you guys to get, if possible. I saw, for example, copies on Amazon for $10, like boxed copies, big boxed copies, which is quite a good price. Not for the original one, but for the special edition one that came later on, and it brought some content that was originally removed from the game, and some other new content that was never introduced. But it's really worthwhile, and if you want actually to get, I would advise, as I said, to get the original copy, because the mixed CD mode that you had there, that had the audio tracks and also the data for the game, it was absolutely amazing. The soundtrack was so great, and I think it's really worthwhile experience for those that never played it, obviously, but for those that did, serves as a reminder how great of this game was. Blade, moving on to the next one, and what do you have for us today?
I'm going to stick to the PC tonight.
Okay, great.
And I'm going to talk about a gem of a game. Well, the second version of the game, because the first one was brought to the couch by Cobalt in the Portuguese videos, and I'm bringing the second version here. What game am I talking about? Dungeon Keeper 2.
So not the second version, but the second game. That's what you're talking about. The follow-up.
You know what I mean.
The successor to Dungeon Keeper.
The evolution.
Not a game that I played that much.
Of Dungeon Keeper.
Unfortunately, not a game that I played that much. But
you should.
It is what it is.
Oh, you really should pick this one back up again. And I mean, I actually prefer the second one to the first one. Well, this game basically picked up the formula from the first game, and if you don't know the game, you basically manage a dungeon where you are the evil lord, and you're going to take over the world from the good guys or the heroes that will sometimes invade and try to beat your dungeon and beat you. You basically are represented by a heart in the center of the dungeon that's called, imagine, the Dungeon Heart. And it's a really cool game. You can actually play games nowadays that have picked up this idea, and one is very neatly done that's called Dungeons, and Dungeons 3 is the last one I played, and it's awesome. And it's based on this one. And what you had to do here is just explore the underground, because you're stuck in the underground, and you have to beat a series of levels and beat the heroes so you can win the game. How you do this is you explore the underground, find valuables like gold and gems, and have your imps work to mine them so you have resources. With these resources you can expand your dungeon, build several rooms to feed your creatures and to house your creatures and train them. Different creatures require different types of housing, and I will let you explore this. I'm not going to get into all the creatures.
That sounds like an RTS game inside of a
but you didn't have direct control over the units. You could actually signal them to go to some place, or you could just pick them up and drop them there, but you can't order them directly to go to a place in the sense of a traditional RTS. Your imps were the funniest part. You could do this with every single unit in the game, but some might be pissed at you and just leave the dungeon. But with the imps this was cool, because if they were working slowly and you needed to motivate them, you just had to slap them, and the more you slap them, the more they would be inspired and work harder and faster. This was so cool. Sometimes you just slap them almost to death and they will be so happy, and you will work like they're Flash. It was so much fun. A good difference, at least for me, from the first game to the second one, is you had these particular demons that were the big horned demons that were actually standard inhabitants in your dungeon in the first one and not in the second one. In the second one you have this one that's called Horny, and that's the one in the cover of the game, basically. And when he shows
Horny.
up, all hell breaks loose, and you know you're just going to win everything that's there. Because literally, it just annihilates everything inside. It's so cool.
Me so horny.
Yeah.
We love you long time.
Yeah. No, but seriously.
I just had to make a joke about that.
If you haven't played this game, just get your hands on it. This game was produced by Bullfrog and released by Electronic Arts back then. You can get it on GOG. And try Dungeons also, because Dungeons is a very cool game, and you can go for the third version. I haven't played the first one. I played second and third.
Maybe
go for them.
Maybe you can leave that one for a next time and bring it up and talk about it, because it's also a great game. As I said, I know the cover of the game. I saw this game. The
cover is epic.
No, yeah, I saw this game quite. It was always in display in the this kind of like place where you could rent games like you would do with with videos, with movies, and this game was there, and I always found the cover so funny. But I remember that back then I probably was like 12 or 13 or something like that, and I asked the guy. And he kind of knew the games that I liked, because I was going there for a long time already, and he knew what kind of games I picked. And he told me that it was not really my genre, and for that matter, I think I only ended up playing it much later than its release date.
You should give it a try now.
I mean, I just I probably will, but time permitting. But the question is that it's such a classic, series, the Dungeon Keeper ones, that I never really, and I have to be honest, I never really got the interest to explore it that much. But again, I mean, it's just
give it some time.
Opinions.
Give this series some love.
I don't think the game is bad. I don't think the game is bad. It's just me that probably are not interested in it. But that's it is what it is. It just doesn't really make any difference. So I'm going to bring up the next game, and I mean, if I talk to you about, let's say, LucasArts and first-person shooters, what exactly comes to mind to you? Do you have any, titles that spice up your memory when we talk about LucasArts and first-person shooters?
You have some Star Wars, but if you talk...
You have the Dark Forces ones, of course, which is a classic. You have, Jedi Knight, which was the follow-up to that. It's a great game. But one game that is very, very less known, or at least it's one of those hidden gems that a lot of people don't really know about this game. And somehow the sales of it were also impacted by the marketing that was done.
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's probably you do. It's a game called Outlaws. It's from 1997. It was developed for Windows and
a very cool
published
game
by LucasArts. Exactly, it's a very cool game, because following the success of Star Wars Dark Forces, where LucasArts sets in stone their signature in the first-person shooter genre, comes this game called Outlaws. Also an FPS set in the Wild West, it tells us the story of a retired US Marshal called James Anderson that got his wife killed and daughter kidnapped over a dispute of his lands. Now, this game, or this gang of criminals headed by Matt, Dr. Death Jackson, and Slim Sam Fulton, were sent by the railroad baron Bob Graham to coerce people into giving up their lands to be used for railroad tracks. So this is the plot right now, and it's up to our Marshal to set his eyes on the revenge and rescue his beloved daughter Sarah. Now, Outlaws has in its base an upgraded graphical engine used on Dark Forces, and the CGI cutscenes are embellished by the proprietary Insane animation engine that gives its distinguished cartoonish look. This was the same animation engine that was used on the Indiana Jones and Monkey Island series, as well as Sam & Max and Full Throttle. The game received overwhelming positive reviews, but not so much for its graphical marvels. In fact, they were quite dated and pixelated for the time. But the plot attracted a lot of fans, since there was not a lot of Wild West themed FPS games at that time, but also because there are several Easter eggs on this game that have references to several LucasArts franchises. Like, for example, Sam & Max. You have Max that is hidden on a building that you can see him, and there are multiple references to Indiana Jones. Now, what you might not know about this game, and this is where it was innovative, is that this was the first game to introduce a sniper rifle with zoom mechanics, something that it's extremely common nowadays, and one of the first to actually introduce a reload mechanic. And again, something that we also see in a lot of FPS games. So despite that it wasn't such a great game, it was actually groundbreaking that LucasArts was bringing these new mechanics into this genre, because they simply didn't exist, or they were just being initially explored. Shortly after the initial release, LucasArts released on their website the missions pack called A Handful of Missions that added some extra content, although not related to the main storyline, and these extra missions were also not connected to each other. Last but not the least, the amazing soundtrack of this game is something worth listening to, as it contains a full orchestra with authentic instruments, instead of relying on MIDI, which was something that was much more, common and probably cheaper back then. So Outlaws is also Outlaws, and the Handful of Missions pack is also available on GOG for €5.10, I believe, which is it's a great game. Again, don't expect a lot of great graphics here. I think that if you want something, no, the game was cool. What I'm saying is, if you want something into the Wild West genre that is way more stupid and probably funnier than this, we're going to be having to talk about Redneck Rampage, which is another great game. But this
we
one,
mentioned
I
that
think,
one in the Portuguese videos already.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Redneck Rampage. I mean, it's a great game. I mean, it's just so funny. But I think it was Quake even that brought it up. I don't really remember. But this game is also quite good. I think that this is like, the let's say the origins, or let's say the basis of such type of games. Although we don't really have a lot of these themed games even nowadays. I mean, you don't have a lot of FPS
common
shooters that approach the Wild West genre, and it's something that, if we think about it, it was full of guns and deaf people, right? Like, you go out of a saloon at midday, you have a gunfight duel, like in Back to the Future, for example. That's one of them. And amazingly, nobody even talks about them on FPS games that uses guns and stuff like that. Again, probably not the point. Thing is, it's a hidden gem for me from LucasArts. I think it's well worth, trying it out. €5. I mean, what do you do with €5 today? Barely nothing. So you can buy this game and enjoy it, because it's really, really a hidden gem, and it's really, really worth playing.
It's a cool game. Yeah.
It is indeed. Blade. So I think that before we close up the rounds up of today, I think you have one last game for us, which is less moldy, right?
Let me get the refresh the. I have an.
Yeah, I never actually understood why you have that there. I mean, you have a perfect scenery behind you.
I have to make this.
You have a perfect scenery behind you. You have an Amiga playing some games. You have a PC, but that's all fine. But then you have
an air freshener.
An air freshener. I mean,
there's a lot of mold in our videos, so.
And in that basement, I assume, right?
Yeah, and this actually makes double sense, because we need an air freshener moment, and
And you need to be air freshened also. So before we dive more into the mold that exists in your basement and in you,
let's go to the
what are we going to talk about then?
Okay, let's go talk about a game for the PC. At least I played it on the PC. You can play it in basically every platform, and I advise you to play this one. It's a game called Jotun from 2015.
Okay.
And it's a really cool game. First of all, and I have to say this game just plainly looks beautiful. It's hand-drawn and animated from beginning to finish. This is simply a beautiful, beautiful game. And everything about this game is extremely well executed. Animations, everything. And you will just love this one.
Very cute action-adventure game, honestly. I think that's very well designed. And really cool. around the Norse mythology.
Norse mythology, right? Exactly. Yeah. And it has an awesome soundtrack. So, great graphics, this great environment, and great audio just makes, for a perfect game to start being there. And it's really a cool game. It's hard. You have some hard mechanics in this game, but basically what you do is you explore a lot with the Norse mythology in mind, and then you have these bosses. The story of the game goes roughly like this. You play this female Viking that died. Well, it was an inglorious death because she drowned. Her name is Sora, and the gods give her a second chance to enter Valhalla. But for that, she has to overcome a few obstacles and defeat these Jotuns. You will face bosses like Jera, Hagalas, Aiza, Kauna, and Faye, and you will even fight Odin himself, so you can earn your right to enter Valhalla. And this is a joy of a game to explore because at no point in this game do you feel like a chore doing everything there, because it's just natural along the way. And the boss fights, you really need to be on your guard and understand how they work and look for an opening to hit them in the right moments, and you do have to follow these mechanics or else you won't beat them. The boss fights are challenging. The rest of the game is challenging. You have these puzzle mechanics, you have to explore the scenarios. You will get a lot of Norse mythology if you don't already. And it's just a beautiful, amazing experience. And the game, I actually loved it. And I'll recommend everyone to try this one because it's really worth it for every aspect of it. And I'm a fan of Norse mythology, so that was an extra.
Yeah,
So
I didn't
give this one a
really.
try.
I didn't really play this game, but I remember seeing a lot of videos about it. Even in fact, I think a few weeks ago, I was watching some video over the internet, and somehow, my YouTube jumped into a gameplay of this, and it's quite funny that you're actually bringing it now,
It's an awesome
because
game.
I was really looking at it and said, yeah, this is one of those that I really have to buy because it seems I like this type of games. I already brought some of them here already to the couch, like especially these action adventure games, indie games that have these themes about around Norse mythology or even Greek mythology and so on.
Yeah.
Great games, they're really well worth it. And you know what is worth it? Also worth it is you guys leaving us a like. Don't forget. Please leave us a like if you like this video. Leave us a dislike if you didn't like. Subscribe our channel. We really need your help to continue bringing up this content. And as you guys know, as we always say, we hope that you had a good round of old and moldy today.
And air freshener one.
And air freshener, of course. Then we reduce the levels of mold.
We take care of you.
But don't worry. We will be right back next week with another dose of mold so that you guys don't forget us. So, as we usually say, guys, toodaloo and game on.
Game on, everyone. See you next week.